Hello everyone, this is Mr. Brain Junkie here, and today we're going to be talking about a science fiction film called Ender's Game. Be ready for some spoilers ahead. In the future, humanity was attacked by a race of aliens called the Formics, trying to colonize the Earth. Tens of millions of people died trying to defend the human civilization, and one of the greatest commanders of the human race sacrificed himself to repel the invading armies. In order to prepare for the next invasion, children are taught and trained to be military commanders from a very young age. Ender is one of the recruits for the training, and Colonel Graff believes after many hours of observation that the young boy is a perfect specimen for military command. He manages to easily beat his classmate in military simulations and shows humility that is rare for someone his age. The boy tries to bully him for losing, but Ender quickly strikes him down and continues to kick him, not for revenge, but to strategically deter others from fighting him in the future. The Colonel sees this in the cameras, and a smile appears on his face. When Ender goes home, he expresses feeling guilty about attacking the other student, but his sister Valentine assures him that he did the right thing because he prevented all future attacks. His brother Peter enters the room and begins attacking the main character in the pretense of playing a game. It turns out that both of Ender's siblings were also cadets before, but failed the selection process because Peter was too aggressive and Valentine too compassionate. Later that day, the Colonel and Major Anderson, a military psychiatrist, goes to visit Ender in his house. After confirming that Ender is a strategic genius by their conversation, the Colonel informs the boy that he's been offered to join combat school in preparation against the Formics. Ender goes into a rocket where he's joined by many other children just like himself. They take off into space and begins to enter zero gravity. The main character's unique perspective about weightlessness impresses the Colonel, but also isolates himself from the other cadets. When they arrive at the training facility, the other children show their disapproval by leaving the last bed closest to the entrance for Ender, but he accepts it with humility. They go to a lecture and watches the footage of humanity's triumph against the Formics from their last battle. The students observe as humanity's greatest commander, Major Rackham, charges towards the enemy's battleship and apparently kills the enemy by destroying himself as well. Everyone in the room cheers except for Ender, who takes the time to analyze the footage unlike the others. Colonel Graff takes the students to a zero-gravity room for training and tells the main character to enter the room first. The boy shows initial fear but quickly adapts to the zero-G environment and leaps off towards the center. One of his classmates, Bean, also manages to adapt very quickly, and the two tests out the weapons they were given on each other, which paralyzes their suit if they're hit. The Colonel regroups everyone and explains that they'll be fighting against other teams in the near future. The teams will be granted points for hitting the other members with the gun, but if any cadet enters the other team's gate, they win regardless of the points. Ender continues to train with his classmates on numerous different subjects like physics and fighting, but what he feels most difficult is understanding the alien invaders. No one truly understands the flight patterns of the Formics and how exactly Major Rackham defeated their entire fleet. Ender continues to send emails to his sister, but is surprised when Valentine never responds. He takes the opportunity to question the Colonel whether if the students' emails are being blocked. The man confirms Ender's suspicion, but also tells him that this is for their own good. He continues to question the sergeant after the Colonel leaves, but gets punished for speaking against the authorities. This angers the sergeant, but also seems to win his classmates' respect as he stood up against what many would consider tyranny. Ender's candid behavior and willingness to fight for what's right begins moving the others as they choose to join him at his table. Before bedtime, Ender begins playing a video game meant for training, where he becomes a mouse and has to choose between drinking from 2 cups of wine. The game master tells Ender that one of them is poisoned and the other is not, but no matter how many times Ender chooses the different options, he gets poisoned as a result. Major Anderson watches with the Colonel on their side and explains that the game is a reflection of the gamer's state of mind. She wants to see how Ender deals with frustration. After realizing that the game is rigged, Ender decides on a choice that wasn't given and kills the game master. His decision surprised the psychiatrist as no one has done that before. Colonel Graff is extremely pleased and immediately promotes Ender to join a senior team called the Salamanders. Ender follows the green line to his new team and meets Petra, the only girl in the group, who immediately takes a liking to the main character. The team leader Bonzo appears and complains about the new recruit right away. He treats Ender with disrespect and tells him to stay behind in their games as he believes the main character to be nothing more than a liability. Petra disagrees with her leader's decision and decides to train Ender on her own. She takes the main character to the training room and shows him the tactics she used for her weapons while their friendship grows closer. When they return, Bonzo becomes furious that they've been training and tells Ender that he doesn't train nor practice with any of the teammates. Ender decides to talk with the leader privately and demands to train, trying to convince Bonzo that by improving his skills, he can be more easily traded to another team. He tells Bonzo to announce this tomorrow morning, allowing the leader to keep his pride but also display compassion and reason to the teammates. Bonzo threatens Ender to never embarrass him again, but decides to grant the main character permission in the morning before their battle against another team. The Salamanders head towards the battle room and everyone charges forward into their formation while Ender stays behind at the order of his leader. Petra tries attacking the opponents with two of her teammates, but they get paralyzed by the shots while the girl is pushed away. After analyzing the battlefield, Ender launches towards Petra and catches her, disobeying Bonzo's orders. He tells the girl to push him towards the enemy as he plays dead while drifting. He manages to enter into the other team's area and begins shooting at everyone as the colonel watches in amazement. He gets shot eventually but wins the game by destroying most of the other team. While training with Petra in hand-to-hand combat, Bonzo shows his anger by punching the main character and threatening to kill him if he disobeys once more. Ender is unable to sleep after the attack and decides to play the simulation once again. The mouse enters the kingdom after killing the game master but meets one of the aliens on the way. Surprisingly, the creature transforms into his sister Valentine and begins approaching the mouse. Their interaction is cut short when asteroids crash into the ground and the sister runs towards a fallen castle with the main character following behind. Once he enters the building, the mouse transforms into Ender and he sees an orb in the center with his sister inside. Suddenly, the carpet turns into a giant snake that attacks the main character, but he throws the creature on the ground and continues to strike it until it's dead. He turns around to look at the orb again, only to see his brother Peter, who congratulates Ender for becoming a killer. The colonel sees the game data and questions how it can produce these images. The psychiatrist explains that these are the manifestations of Ender's emotions and expresses the conflicts he's feeling right now. Colonel Graff believes that the game is harming the boy and demands Anderson to erase the whole thing. At the same time, he also gets alarmed by the spike in the aliens' military numbers reported by the human scouts near the Formix planet. The colonel believes that time is running out and proceeds to offer Ender a team of his own where he'll be the leader instead of taking orders. Ender walks into the new headquarters only to see many of his old teammates present as well. He tells everyone that they're allowed to ask questions and suggest better strategies to their new leader. He then trains his team intensively and their progress is apparent to the colonel and the major, who decides to test their abilities by putting them in competition. The main character wakes everyone and notifies them of their next battle. Apparently, the colonel has put them against two teams, the Salamander and the Leopard. The group arrives at the gate only to see that the doors are open already, which never happened before. Ender looks at the entrance and suspects an ambush. He uses one of the teammates as shield and protects Petra while they drift out and fires at the enemies hiding behind the entrance. He then ties Bean to a rope and throws the boy over the blockage in order to see the formation that the enemy has set up in defense. Even though they received multiple hits, Ender discovers the shape of the enemy's defense and devises a plan to counter their strategy. The team forms into a ball and flies towards the enemy's gate while using the counter forces from their teammates' momentum to change directions. Their plan is to protect one member with the body of everyone else until they drift inside the enemy's gate. The other team shoots furiously at them, but fails to get through as the group heads towards the entrance and eventually enters the doors, winning the game. Everyone celebrates as Bonzo looks at them with disgust and humiliation. While taking a shower, Ender is confronted by Bonzo, who tries to start a fight for losing the game. Although the main character tried to resolve the issue before anyone got hurt, Bonzo refuses to back down and gets pushed to the ground by Ender in self-defense. The boy hits his head on the platform and becomes unconscious. Ender quickly runs over to help, but the damage is done. They try to operate on Bonzo, but the chances of survival is slim. Ender feels extremely guilty for the incident, but sees that the colonel is not affected at all. Ender wants to go back to Earth and make amends for his actions, but the colonel refuses and says that the military owns their lives now. Realizing that the colonel cares very little for anything besides the battle results, Ender demands to quit and refuses to play the games anymore. With no other choice, the colonel goes to the boy's home and talks the sister into convincing her brother to come back to the military. Valentine is hesitant in the beginning and questions the colonel about his methods, but the man assures her that what they're doing is saving the future of mankind. Ender sees Valentine and embraces her right away. They go onto the lake and the boy tells her that he can't battle the aliens anymore. He always won against the enemies because he understood how they think, but this also meant that he becomes compassionate towards them as well. Valentine cries as she tells Ender that he must return and try, because if he doesn't, then everyone else would eventually die as well. The main character decides to go back with the colonel, but demands that he retains the ability to speak with his family in the future. He notices that they passed the combat school and inquires about where they're going, to which the colonel answers that they're going somewhere much further than before. They arrive at the command base close to the Formic's home planet and enters the underground base. The colonel explains that they took this place from the aliens 27 years after the initial attack. All the Formics ran away from here and back to their home planet where they're quarantined by the humans. Ender questions why the colonel wants to attack the aliens if they're currently under control, but the man says that it's the same philosophy to why Ender kept on kicking the student from before. They must attack now in order to end all future wars. Ender wakes up the next morning and looks out the window, only to feel a strange sensation like something is drawing him closer in the distance. He turns around only to see a man full of tattoos who attacks him immediately, pinning him on the bed. The man tells Ender that he'll be teaching the boy from now on by devising the strategies for the enemies in all future simulations. As far as Ender is concerned, the man is the enemy he must fight against every day. The main character also learns that this man is in fact Rackham, the commander that he idolizes. Mazer shows Ender the complete version of the clips from his fight years ago. Apparently, he destroyed the mothership controlling all the aliens, which resulted in their final victory. The government didn't want this information to leak out, therefore faking Mazer's death and changing the video as well. The man takes Ender into the simulation room, and he's surprised to see his closest teammates here as well. They'll be aiding him in commanding the troops as he trains to become the mastermind of the entire human fleet. Mazer shows Ender the ultimate weapon of the human race, a gigantic cannon called the MD-500 that is capable of immense destruction, designed to fire at the command of Petra. Ender begins training and commands his fleet to engage the aliens on a distant planet that appears to be gathering water from the rings for resources. The main character tells Petra to stay behind, as he orders numerous drones to attack the aliens from above. This of course is a distraction as he maneuvers the cannons below the enemies. The Formics begin attacking the ship from above, while Ender fires at them from below, destroying their entire fleet. The team celebrates in their victory. As time goes on, Ender goes through numerous simulations that are becoming more realistic and difficult while not getting adequate sleep. He begins to make mistakes as he tries micromanaging one of his comrades that results in the complete destruction of one of their subunits. Mazer becomes furious at Ender for committing such careless mistakes and warns him that in real battle, they cannot absorb this kind of loss to their military. Colonel Graf tells Ender to trust his teammates more and informs the boy that tomorrow will be the last simulation before they decide if he's ready for real battle. At night, Ender questions his ability for real battle, as he doesn't think he can make the correct choices when faced with decisions that involves taking lives. The next day, Ender goes into the simulation room and prepares for battle while all the military leaders watch for his results. They approach the aliens' planet, and strangely, all the ships converge and waits from the distance instead of attacking the human fleet. Ender finds this to be odd, but ignores the behavior and sends a group of drones to attack the Formics. The aliens defend their fleet by swarming everywhere and finishing off the group that the main characters sent in the beginning. However, this was part of his plan to draw out the enemy's forces, as he takes this opportunity to charge up his ultimate weapon and fires at the swarm, killing all the enemies in a single hit. The battle is not over yet, as even more aliens begin rising out from the planet to attack the humans. Ender quickly orders all the drones to surround and protect the massive cannon, disregarding the annihilation of all his other fleets. He tells Petra to prepare the cannon as they move closer. Ender plans to fire at the planet and destroy the queens, as that would kill off everything else as well. The drones rotate as they drill through the swarm of alien fighters, moving closer towards the Formix planet. He commands the planes to begin moving ahead, clearing a path for the cannon's trajectory. Ender shouts for Petra to shoot, and the weapon fires onto the planet, causing a huge explosion on the surface. The chain reaction turns the entire surface into a sea of flames, destroying every single life on the planet. The team celebrates their victory and cheers at the leaders, but only to see that the men are dead silent. Ender notices something wrong as Mazer and the Colonel informs him that they have won the war. Realizing that all his battles were real, the boy runs out of the room in disgust as he can't believe he just murdered an entire species. The Colonel tells him that they had no choice as they needed to kill the Formix in order to secure humanity's future. Ender disagrees as he thinks that the aliens didn't want to fight but only defend themselves against the human invaders. Colonel Graff thinks that this doesn't matter as humans have won, but the main character argues that the way humanity won matters more than the results. Ender goes back to his quarters to rest and begins dreaming about the games that he played. Suddenly, he realizes the meaning behind it and rushes towards the outside. He explains to Petra that the Formix were trying to communicate with him through the games, and he must go towards the destination that they left for him. He walks towards the building that is similar to his dreams and proceeds inside until he finds the orb-like structure where he saw his sister. Ender continues inside and finds an egg with life beating from within on top of the table. The alien queen comes out and moves towards the boy. She acknowledges that Ender was responsible for the genocide and plans to kill him, but stops when she sees tears fall from his eyes, showing his remorse and guilt. The queen retracts her claws and points towards the egg, allowing Ender to take the last hope of their civilization with him. Ender swears to amend his wrongs and brings the egg towards a distant galaxy where he can resurrect the alien race. So what do you guys think about this movie? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like my video, please press like and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys next time.